I'm Ivy, 28 years old, and if you asked my extended family to describe me, they'd probably say something like the quiet one or the niece who's always working. But I've never made waves. I show up for holidays, bring a bottle of wine, smile through whatever chaos is going on, and leave early. That's been my rhythm for years. It works. Or at least it used to. My uncle Daryl just turned 56. He's the kind of guy who treats every gathering like he's the main event. He loves a crowd, thrives on attention, and acts like a comedian even when nobody's laughing. Every family has one like him. He doesn't just host Thanksgiving, he turns it into a game show. He gives out fake awards, roasts people with pre-written jokes, and somehow always gets away with it by saying it's just a bit. Last year, at Thanksgiving, Daryl decided it'd be funny to read my Bumble profile out loud at the dinner table. I didn't even know he had access to it. I still don't. His daughter Felicia, who's 25 and constantly filming everything, had found it somehow. She recorded the whole thing and uploaded it to TikTok. I didn't find out until a coworker asked me if I meant to go viral. I kept it together in the moment, but the second I got home, I texted Daryl to ask him to take the video down. He left me on read. Then he replied an hour later with lighten up and a laughing emoji. I blocked Felicia. I muted most of my family. Quietly, I started distancing myself. No fight, no drama, just space. Daryl's birthday was coming up, and I already told my mother I wouldn't be going. She asked once, didn't push. I think she could tell there was a line I didn't want crossed again. Then, 2 days before the party, Daryl called me. I figured it was going to be a quick guilt trip or some last-minute pressure, but I answered anyway. First thing I asked was, "Are you on speaker?" He chuckled. "No, go ahead. Just you and me." I believed him. So I told him, calmly and directly, why I wouldn't be attending. I said I didn't appreciate being made fun of last year, or that I felt humiliated, and not just because of the dinner. That video had nearly gotten me pulled into a formal HR conversation at work because it got back to a client. I told him I didn't want to be in an environment where people don't respect boundaries. I got halfway through the sentence when I heard a second voice, then laughter, then someone clinking a glass and shouting, "Tell her she's dramatic." It wasn't speakerphone, it was a microphone. He had me piped through the whole party's PA system. Apparently his birthday brunch had already started, around 40 people, family and friends, all listening in while I thought I was having a private conversation. I ended the call without saying anything else. An hour later, my phone started blowing up. Texts from numbers I hadn't saved in years. Distant cousins, old neighbors, even a girl I used to babysit. What was that call about? Did you know we were listening? You really hate your family that much? I ignored every single one. Then came the voicemails. One from Felicia, all giggles, saying you actually made it more fun this year, so thanks for the content. One from my Aunt Laura, saying I embarrassed Daryl on his birthday and should apologize for ruining the vibe. One from my dad, surprisingly quiet, just saying, "We'll talk later." I blocked Felicia again. She must have used a different number or made a new account. I didn't respond to anyone else. Not because I didn't have anything to say, because I didn't want to be baited into a circus. I knew if I said one word, it'd be screenshotted and passed around. I'd become the entertainment again. 2 days later, someone from work mentioned the call. That's when I realized someone at the party had recorded the entire thing and shared it. Not on TikTok this time, on Facebook, and tagged me. The video was just audio with someone filming the brunch crowd laughing. You could hear my voice clearly. You could hear me trying to speak calmly. You could hear people mocking me while I was mid-sentence. They titled it, "Ivy Goes Off," like I had screamed or ranted or something. I emailed the person who uploaded it and asked them to remove it. No response. I reported it. Still up. So I did something I've never done before. I decided to stop being quiet. Wada. But not with them. They already proved they'd never listen to me unless it was on speaker, at a party, with drinks in their hands and phones recording. So I took a different route. And that's where all of this started unraveling. Because if they thought a call ruined a birthday brunch, they had no idea what was coming next. After I ended the call, my phone buzzed nonstop. Most of the messages were from cousins I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. One cousin asked if I'd finally snapped, another said I was making something small into a big drama, and a third just sent a popcorn emoji. My Aunt Rachel sent a long paragraph about how I ruined Daryl's special day and how there are better ways to handle family issues than public tantrums. I blocked her and deleted her number. A few messages stood out. Maddie, a childhood friend who had been to enough of our family events to know how things usually went, sent a one-liner, "You really said what we all were thinking. Respect." That was the only message I read twice. Later that night, a cousin I barely knew messaged me to say some people left the brunch early. Apparently, the moment I started talking, a few guests looked uncomfortable, and when it became clear I was unaware I was being broadcasted, people started shifting around. One of the neighbors left halfway through and didn't even stay for cake. Another family friend told Felicia she was disappointed in her for laughing during the call. I wasn't there, but the ripple effect was obvious. My mother called that evening. She didn't scold me. She asked if I was okay. Then she told me Daryl was furious. Not just at me, but at how people were still talking about the call 3 days later. It's at the grocery store, at his gym. Even a coworker mentioned it during a morning meeting. She said he hadn't expected people to side with me. I didn't say much. I thanked her for checking in, and she didn't push. That night, my dad called. He's Daryl's older brother, and usually the one who tries to keep things civil in the family. He sounded tired. He said he wished I had warned him something like this was coming, especially since he was sitting at the table when it happened. I told him I didn't plan anything. Daryl put me on speaker. He made it public. Not me. There was a long pause after that. Then he told me my grandmother wanted to talk. I said no, not now. I needed time. He didn't argue. Felicia tried reaching out the next morning. She texted, "Guess you're the main character this week," followed by a winking emoji. Then, "It's just banter. Don't be mad." I didn't reply. I muted her number and archived the thread. At 11:53 p.m. that night, Daryl sent me a message. "I was trying to make peace with you. I wanted to show the family we were cool again. You blew it. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I typed, you blew it, when you didn't listen after I asked to not be on speaker. I hit send. A minute later, I blocked his number. No more chances. The next day, my manager pulled me aside at work. We had a good relationship, so when she asked if I had a moment to talk privately, I didn't panic. We went into a conference room. She said HR had flagged a message that came through the general inbox. Someone had forwarded a video of the brunch speakerphone call. Not the TikTok, it looked like a screen recording from someone's phone. They added a note, is this one of your employees? She might be leaking family business for attention. My manager said HR was obligated to review it, but she personally shut it down. She told them it was clearly a private matter. You're not in trouble, she said, but your family's mess is too loud. She suggested I set some privacy boundaries. Whatever's going on, keep it out of sight. People are nosy. I went home, closed the curtains, and didn't turn on any lights. Just the glow of my laptop. I opened a blank spreadsheet and titled it, People Who No Longer Deserve My Silence. I typed the first name in bold, Daryl, then under that, Felicia, then Rachel. I didn't stop there. I added names I hadn't even thought about in months. People who stood by, laughed, forwarded clips, or reached out only to stir the pot. I organized them into columns, name, relationship, last incident, action taken, notes. It felt clinical, efficient, like I was sorting data, because that's what it was now, patterns, reactions, consequences. The next day, I submitted a request at work to change my phone number on file and asked it to remove my personal email from the company Slack. I didn't explain why. 3 days later, I got an email from a distant cousin who wasn't even at the party. The subject line said, just checking in. The body of the message read, saw the video. Didn't know it was that bad. Let me know if you want to talk. I didn't reply. That weekend, my neighbor across the hall ran into me in the elevator and asked, was that you in the video? She had the decency to look uncomfortable when I didn't answer. By Monday, I had deleted every family contact from my phone, except my parents. I started looking into apartment listings out of state, quiet places, no brunches, no microphones. Because if Daryl wanted to treat me like a show, I was going to make sure he never got another encore. The day after I blocked Daryl's number, he showed up at my apartment. No warning, no message, just him, standing outside my building holding a Baskin-Robbins ice cream cake in one hand and knocking on the glass door with the other. The smirk on his face said everything before he even spoke. He waved at the security camera, then pressed the intercom. I buzzed in and asked what he wanted. He said, thought I'd bring a peace offering. Can we talk? I told him unless that cake had a written apology baked inside, there wasn't going to be a conversation. He laughed like I was joking. Then he tried the usual lines. Let's move past it. It's not that deep. And of course you know I didn't mean anything by it. I hung up and let the building staff deal with him. He stood outside for 5 more minutes, then left the cake on the front desk. I told them they could toss it. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a group text from a cousin named Tyrone, who loves pretending he's the peacemaker. The message said, family dinner to smooth things over, everyone please come. The invite was for Saturday, at Daryl's house with potluck-style notes and a winking emoji. I replied with a thumbs-down emoji. 10 minutes later, my cousin Daria messaged separately, girl, please just come. He's trying, okay? I replied, he's trying to save face, not make things right. My mom called a few hours later. She said my grandmother was planning to skip Sunday Mass unless I showed up at the dinner. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, then I hope God understands because I'm not coming. I added that guilt was a tool that stopped working on me years ago. That night, I started a new document. I had the spreadsheet, but this was different. A journal. Every message I got, every call, every sly comment posted on someone's story that I knew was about me, I wrote them all down. It wasn't just venting. It was clarity. It helped me track the pattern of how people were trying to spin the story. 2 days later, during lunch at work, Julian from the tech team told me about a silent retreat he does every month. He said it helped him disconnect from noise, literal and emotional. The moment he mentioned it, something clicked. I went home that evening and booked a 3-day stay at the same retreat center. No phone, no laptop, no talking. Just books, walking trails, and quiet meals. That same night, Daryl sent an email. Not a personal one. An actual email with a subject line, can we reset? The message said, let's not drag this. Family's watching. I forwarded it to my dad with a note. This is what he thinks an apology looks like. He didn't reply. 1 week later, a formal envelope arrived in my mailbox. Thick paper, gold-trimmed edges, and a printed invitation that looked more like a wedding announcement than anything else. The title was Family Reconciliation Brunch. It was scheduled for 2 Sundays from now at a fancy country club outside the city. Inside the envelope, there was a schedule with arrival times, an optional outfit theme, and a note at the bottom in small cursive letters. Let's remind ourselves how strong family can be. I didn't respond right away. That night, I posted a private poll on my story, should I go to this PR brunch? 92% of the people who voted said, absolutely not. 2 people said free food is free food, but they were joking. I mailed back the RSVP card with the declined box checked. Under comments, I wrote, some things can't be fixed with mimosas. I thought that was the end of it for the week, but then I got a voicemail from someone I hadn't expected, Miss Geneva. She's my grandmother's caregiver and has been for years. I've always liked her. No drama, no gossip, just warm and real. Her voice on the message was calm. She said Grandma had something she wanted to give me, and that I should stop by, but alone. I texted her directly to confirm. She said she'd make sure the house was quiet, that no one else would be there. I double-checked 3 times. Then I agreed to come the following morning. When I arrived, Miss Geneva opened the door before I even rang the bell. The house was quiet. No TV, no voices. Just the soft creak of floorboards as she led me through the living room to the back sunroom, where my grandmother sat in her chair with a small velvet pouch in her lap. She didn't speak right away. She just opened the pouch, pulled out a delicate gold bracelet, and placed it in my hand. I recognized it immediately. It used to be hers. One of the few pieces she wore only on holidays. Inside the clasp, my initials were engraved. Not new, engraved years ago, when I was still a teenager. She pointed to a folded piece of paper on the table. I picked it up and read it. One paragraph, handwritten. She wrote that she had asked for the bracelet to go to me in her will, but wanted me to have it now. No explanations. Just that I deserved to have something that was always meant for me. I nodded, thanked her, and left without saying much. Miss Geneva walked me to the door. Before I left, she said, "That brunch won't change anything, but that bracelet will remind you who you are." When I got home, I put the bracelet in my drawer, opened my laptop, and added a new tab to the spreadsheet, Receipts That Matter. When I stepped into my grandmother's sunroom, I thought I knew what to expect. Maybe a few carefully chosen words about forgiveness. Maybe some tea and shortbread cookies she always offered during serious talks. Instead, she handed me a thick envelope and said, "Read this before I'm gone. Don't argue." Inside was a folded letter, written in her cursive handwriting, dated almost 2 years ago. The ink was slightly smudged near the top, and the pages were yellowed at the edges like it had been moved around a drawer too many times. I sat down and read it while she stared out the window. She had written that she'd noticed how the family treated me over the years, like a reliable fixture, but never like someone who deserved softness or celebration. She wrote that being quiet didn't mean I should be overlooked, and that just because I never asked for space didn't mean I didn't need it. She wrote about last year's Thanksgiving. She said after the Bumble incident, she pulled Daryl aside and told him what he did was wrong, but she regretted not saying it in front of everyone. Then she wrote one sentence I kept rereading: "Healing sometimes means burning the bridge behind you so no one can follow." I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and hugged her. She didn't say anything else, but she patted my back twice before I left. Geneva walked me to the door again, then quietly said, "They canceled that brunch, you know. Word is it happened after you sent the RSVP." When I got home, I didn't check my phone right away. I placed the envelope inside the drawer with the bracelet, then sat at my desk and opened the spreadsheet. Under the Receipts That Matter tab, I added, "Letter from Grandma, dated 2 years ago, written admission of silence and regret." Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Drew, Felicia's older brother. He's the kind of cousin who never gets involved in anything, but also the one you'd call if your car broke down. Chill, quiet, observant. He sent me a series of screenshots from a group chat I had never seen before. It was a private thread called Family Direction Chat, started by Daryl and filled with about a dozen of my relatives. The first message read, "Okay, we'll say Ivy misunderstood the brunch invite. No drama, just confusion." Another said, "She's always been sensitive, just frame it as that." Then, "No one else post about anything. If she wants to be distant, let her, but don't let her make it about us." Drew followed the screenshots with a single message, "Can I leak this?" I told him, "No need, I'll do it myself." I forwarded the screenshots to my dad with a short message, "This is what Daryl means by reconciliation." There was no reply. But the next day, my mother called to say the brunch had been fully canceled. No backup plan, no rain check. Just a quiet cancellation that didn't go through the family chat, but instead came one by one through phone calls and vague text updates. By noon that day, 3 cousins had left the group chat altogether. One of them messaged me directly to say she was sorry for how things played out. Another one said she didn't realize how deep it had gotten until she saw the group chat messages. The third didn't say anything, just liked one of my old photos that had nothing to do with the drama. I knew what it meant. Felicia was nowhere in any of it. I found out she blocked me when someone else tried to tag both of us in a throwback photo from years ago, and her name wouldn't load. I hadn't even noticed until that moment. It didn't matter. I updated the spreadsheet again. Family Direction Chat, Managed Narrative, Daryl led, deleted messages after leak started, archived. Julian called me around 5 p.m. He said he had an open spot for the weekend retreat. Someone had canceled last minute. I booked it before he finished the sentence. I packed a duffel bag with 3 books, a journal, the bracelet, and the envelope. No phone charger, no laptop, no makeup. Just what I needed to disappear for a few days. We drove out early Saturday morning. No music, just open windows and mountain air. The retreat center was quiet, tucked into a hillside surrounded by trees. No reception, no Wi-Fi, no talking during meals. Just people walking trails, reading in silence and pressing reset. I spent 3 days away from everything. When I came back, I had 15 missed calls and 42 unread messages. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I sat down, opened the spreadsheet, and started a new tab, Next Steps. Because this wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about making sure Daryl's performances had no stage left. When I came back from the silent retreat, I turned on my phone and let it load without touching anything. 38 unread texts, 12 missed calls, 1 voicemail from my mother that started with, "You've gone too far," and ended with a sigh long enough to stretch across the city. I didn't respond. I sat at my desk, opened the Next Steps tab on the spreadsheet, and started documenting everything again. The voicemail made more sense later that evening. Word about the leaked group chat had spread faster than I expected. Apparently, Daryl spent the weekend making calls to do damage control with extended relatives who were supposed to attend his next dinner party. My second cousin, Aria, who I haven't spoken to in maybe 6 years, called my mom directly and said she wouldn't be coming. No explanation. Just a flat-out no. That was enough. Daryl, in true Daryl fashion, went on a long call with some relatives and told them he forgave me, but that I had crossed the line and disrespected the family. My mother mentioned it later, not taking sides, just relaying facts. I only said one thing: forgiveness doesn't count when it's condescending. Then I logged out of every family thread I hadn't already exited. Kellen. That same afternoon, I got a surprise email. The sender ran a mid-sized family drama podcast. The subject line, opportunity to respond before the episode airs. The body of the message asked if I wanted to share my side of the story before they dropped an episode about modern family betrayal, featuring my cousin Felicia as a guest. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I hadn't spoken to Felicia since she blocked me, and now she was using our family drama to push herself into a podcast feature. I didn't respond. Instead, I requested a full transcript and any audio clips involving my name. Turns out, Felicia had submitted the original TikTok video, the birthday brunch recording, and this was the worst part, edited screenshots from our private messages to enhance the timeline. She presented it as a cautionary tale about what happens when one relative poisons the well. Her voice was in the teaser clip. So was mine, taken straight from that brunch speakerphone call. I contacted the podcast's legal team with a formal cease and desist. I cited unauthorized use of my voice and real name, and I included a folder of digital receipts, the full, unedited versions of our messages, a proof that I had never agreed to be involved, and a record of Felicia's previous post-takedown refusals. Within 12 hours, the podcast team responded. They were apologetic, pulled the episode, and removed the teaser from all platforms. They assured me it wouldn't air or be mentioned again. Just after midnight, Daryl emailed me again. No jokes this time. No passive-aggressive fake apologies. Just a cold message with bullet points. The subject line, "You've made your point." The body listed everything I had cost the family: embarrassment, dinner cancellations, strained relationships, and his own reputation within our community. He said I had weaponized technology to create division, even though he was the one unraveling in public and snapping at neighbors about family jokes. He mentioned the canceled brunch, the retreat, the podcast takedown, and the fact that certain family members were now hesitant to host anything with our last name attached. The last line, "You'll regret this. You've made enemies out of your own blood." I replied with 2 words, "Try me." The next morning, my landlord knocked on my door. He held a printed letter. Someone had sent an anonymous complaint to the building manager claiming I was operating a digital media business from my apartment in violation of residential zoning laws. The letter had no return address. It accused me of unauthorized commercial content production, listed specific times, and referenced recorded materials being distributed across the internet. The only people who would know those timeframes. My family. I told my landlord the truth. I said I was a full-time analyst and had never recorded a single thing from inside the apartment. I showed him my employee badge, my work logs, and even gave him a tour of the unit to show that there was no equipment, no setup, not even a ring light. He believed me. Said he figured it was nonsense, but had to check to cover protocol. I added another entry to the Receipts That Matter tab, anonymous zoning complaint filed to building management, suspected retaliation, timeline overlaps Daryl's email threat. At lunch, I called Julian. I asked if that retreat offered week-long stays. He laughed and said he'd find out. When I got back to my desk, another message was waiting, this time from an unknown number. No name. Just one sentence, "You should learn when to quit." I forwarded it to my lawyer. Then I closed the laptop, made tea, and packed a bag for the weekend. I was done reacting. It was time to start preparing. After the anonymous zoning complaint, I stopped waiting for things to quiet down. I began organizing every detail, calls, messages, emails, even the voicemail from my landlord, into a single file. I wasn't just collecting drama. I was building a timeline. Every incident had a date, time, and cross-reference. I labeled it with one simple title, Escalations. A friend of mine who works in cybersecurity helped me trace the email headers from the zoning complaint. The metadata showed the complaint came from a device previously associated with Daryl's work email. That was all I needed. I didn't have to report him directly. I just forwarded the documentation, anonymized, from a burner address to a former colleague of his who'd quietly mentioned once that his company had a zero-tolerance policy for harassment, on or off the clock. I left no commentary, just attachments in chronological order. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "You went nuclear." I replied. I aimed for precision. Drew called me the next evening and said Daryl had been placed on administrative review while they investigated. And he didn't get fired yet, but they pulled him from external events and flagged his employee account for behavioral assessment. The irony wasn't lost on me. All the times he accused me of being too serious, and now his behavior was being reviewed under a professional code of conduct. The group chat was shut down completely. Not just abandoned, archived. Daryl tried creating a new one. Only 2 people joined. One of them was Felicia. The other was someone I didn't even recognize. I didn't post anything. I didn't respond to anything. For the first time in weeks, I just focused on work. Evenings, I spent time with Julian, helping him redesign his project portfolio, and in return, he helped me build a private blog to publish essays I'd been writing. Not about Daryl. Not about family. Just things that mattered to me. The process was quiet, clean. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from my dad. It was short. I read Grandma's letter. I didn't know. That was it. No follow-up. No apology. Just acknowledgement. I wrote back, I didn't either, until she handed it to me. That was the first time in months we had a conversation that didn't feel like tiptoeing over broken glass. After that, a few event invites trickled in. A barbecue hosted by a cousin I hadn't seen in a year. A small dinner at a relative's place who used to always make me a vegetarian side dish without asking. These weren't orchestrated events. No printed invitations. No group chats. No Daryl. No Felicia. Just casual messages, asking if I felt like showing up. I declined most of them. Politely. No long explanations. Just, not yet. Some of them said they understood. A few said they hoped I'd change my mind eventually. Nobody pressured me. That mattered more than they realized. One night, Julian mentioned a private group he was part of. A small discussion circle that met online twice a month to talk about boundaries, family tension, and processing conflict in healthy ways. He asked if I wanted to try attending a session. I said yes. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't a place to rant. It was a space where people listened without waiting to respond. During the second session, we were asked to write one paragraph about something we'd learned the hard way, then read it out loud, if we wanted to. I wrote something simple. Sometimes a boundary looks like distance. Other times it sounds like silence. and sometimes it's just hanging up without explaining why. The group leader asked if he could read my piece anonymously on a podcast he hosted for the community. I said sure. It wasn't about anyone in particular, just a pattern I'd finally learned to recognize. The episode aired the following Monday. He read my paragraph at the very end. Then he added his own closing line. Sometimes a boundary sounds like silence. Other times, it sounds like a click and a dial tone. That quote stayed with me. I printed it, cut it out, and taped it under the spreadsheet I kept on my fridge. The one labeled people who no longer deserve my silence. It didn't feel like a grudge list anymore. It felt like a safety net, a reminder that just because someone's family doesn't mean they get a permanent seat at your table. Later that week, Julian and I took a walk through the city and past a restaurant where Daryl once roasted me over dinner for never being spontaneous. I pointed it out in silence. We kept walking. Nothing needed to be said. A week after the podcast episode aired, Julian mentioned something during lunch. One of his friends from the discussion group reached out to him and said that what I had shared helped her finally set a boundary with her own mother. She'd been holding onto guilt for years, thinking that silence was love. That message changed something. I hadn't just been dealing with my own mess. I had unknowingly stepped into a pattern that stretched beyond just our family. All those years of being told to keep the peace, take the joke, let things go, it wasn't just mine. That same afternoon, my mother called. It wasn't a guilt call, not like the others. She asked if I could come by for tea, just her and me. No cousins, no reunions, no Daryl. I said yes. When I got to her house, she had chamomile tea steeping in buttered toast on the table. It was the same setup she used to make when I was a teenager after a bad test or an argument at school. We sat in silence for a bit. Then she reached into a kitchen drawer and pulled out a faded birthday card. The front had a drawing of a rocket ship. The back was written in red crayon. I had signed it when I was 9. The message said, "You make me feel small sometimes, but I still hope you like your cake." She read it out loud once, then folded it and said she never really saw it for what it was until now. She told me she had spent most of her life avoiding conflict to keep things smooth. She thought it was love. But now she wasn't so sure. That evening, when I got home, I took the spreadsheet off my fridge. I didn't throw it out or rip it up. I filed it into a drawer. It wasn't closure, it was a record. A reminder that silence isn't always kindness, and keeping receipts doesn't make you bitter. Sometimes it just keeps you sane. The very next morning, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Daryl. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. I played it through my headphones. "You got your revenge," he said. "But family isn't something you win or lose. It's something you preserve. If I crossed a line, I'm sorry." I didn't delete it. I saved it to my cloud drive and labeled it apology by force. Later that week, Drew sent me a voice memo. Daryl had been asked to step down from a public-facing board he chaired for years. It wasn't just because of me. Several coworkers had quietly submitted complaints after realizing they weren't alone. I guess all it took was someone lighting a match first. Felicia, not to be left out, left a dramatic voicemail on a cousin's phone. She rambled about the family legacy and how we were all letting outsiders pollute the bond. The cousin forwarded it to Drew. Drew sent it to me. Nobody replied to her. The silence around her voicemail said more than any argument could. Meanwhile, Julian and I launched our blog. We kept it anonymous. No photos, no names, just quiet entries about boundaries, power, discomfort, and family. We didn't try to make it viral. It wasn't that kind of project. It was something we both needed to exist. It's a place where words had room to breathe. One night, I came home to find a small package at my door. It was from Miss Geneva. Inside was a framed piece of needlepoint embroidery. At the bottom of the frame, she had taped a small card that read, "This is the last one she worked on," before her hands got too weak. The stitched words read, "Don't shrink to fit places you've outgrown." I hung it above my desk. It didn't make me emotional. It made me steady. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the quiet girl who used to whisper warnings into phones, and the woman who finally answered her own voice when it got loud enough. That same week, I forwarded Daryl's final voicemail to my own email and saved the file under a folder titled Closure. Then I deleted the contact from my phone. There was no final message, no announcement, just a tap on the screen, the click of a contact disappearing into digital dust. That was it, the only sound a boundary ever really needs.